So yeah, man. Why do you do what you do? Because it's pretty unique. Live streaming every day, opening your heart to the world. Where does this come from, and what inspires you to do it?
Thank you for asking, man. It started as as like a whole like a little bit of an ego thing, to be completely honest. Like I had this moment where I was preparing for a festival, rolling joints, and I was like feeling to myself, I wish I had a friend to kind of have a chat with in this moment. And Arpan, Reddit streaming service, which they weirdly enough killed yesterday, unable to stream there anymore.
They blocked
They
you?
they had this. Either they blocked me or they completely killed the entire service. Like there's a bunch
Oh,
of people having a hard time going live right now, which is kind of unfortunate. But that was like my initial introduction to live streaming.
mm-hmm.
And I just had a phone kind of like pointing down at my hands, and I could read the chat. And I see these people coming into the space with me, right? And every single one of us is a conscious whole. And then seeing their interpretation of what I'm doing. And eventually I put my camera kind of like towards my face, starting to have these conversations. And it became this deep sense of community, right? Like this feeling
Mm-hmm.
of connectedness with people without having to be connected with someone, right? Expecting someone to be there with you in that moment. Then I went to this festival, and it was one of those genuinely life changing ones where the conversations I had with friends there, the people I met, the happenings, the events that I went through, I kind of like, there's this little place called the Soul, had this whole shamanic card pulling, uh, animal cards, sacred angel cards, dragon cards. And I was kind of like in that moment with these friends pulling these cards. And the shaman that was going through the whole process kind of like addressed me directly and asked me a bunch of questions, especially so in the context of sacrifice. You know, how the archetype that is, at least that I identify with, over and over and over again, sacrifices itself, to the world, to the point of death. And he looked me in the eyes and he asked me, what are you going to do this time around? And I burst out in tears, and I had this realization that this streaming thing that I've been doing is in a way a self-sacrifice where I can give myself to the world in some sort of tangible way without losing myself. And I kind of like struggled with the idea of starting this live going process. And I was sitting and I just had this genuine feeling of like I need to do something. This was just after I returned from China, after teaching English on that side. And I decided, and as I said, from a little bit of an egoic perspective, that I was going to start doing this every day for a year. That was my initial like mission to I'm going to do it for a whole year. And as I was like starting to go through this process, showing up for people, there were regulars, people that would be repeat customers, to say it in so many words. And then I got to know them. Javan is one of them that comes to my mind right now. Like since day 34, she's been here, and
Wow.
she's still tuning in. So like it's been this process of getting to know people and seeing just how much love that can be shared in a moment of remembrance, knowing that we're connected, knowing that we're not alone, realizing that we're not crazy, that the things that we're thinking and feeling have parallels with people across the world, like I live in South Africa, you live in America, and yet we can see a similarity, a synchronicity within each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became this genuine realization of showing up every single day for something, especially showing up every single day for something that you love, creates this feeling within me where no matter what it is, no matter the difficulty I'm going through the day, the fights I could be potentially having with family members, the difficulty and technology, that in showing up for something that I actually care about and actually love, it,
Yeah.
it creates this genuine sense in my heart that what I'm doing has value.
Mm.
And that has become both my message and the thing that I'm showing up for. So as I keep showing up, I keep encouraging people to show up for what they love as well.
I like that, man. That's your sadhana. Mm.
Bhakti yoga, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, you're devoted to. You have to show. Have you ever missed a day?
Nope.
Wow. Yeah, that's devotion. That's awesome. I like that, man. And that's a message for other people to show up for whatever they got to do. devote themselves to whatever, not devote themselves to you, devote themselves to whatever
Oh,
they got to do.
exactly. And, and
Yeah.
and that's like one of my big principles as well, that if you tune into the stream and you find the message of showing up for what you love every day, you can never come back, right? You can show up for the rest of your life showing up for what you love, and in 50 years come back to me and be like, "Oh, Melt, I showed up for 50 years for something I love and nothing came of it." And I'll be like, "Oh, is it? You showed up for 50 years for something that you loved." That's what came of it.
Mm. Isn't it awesome that we can just be able to do that? Like you can live stream yourself every single day and there's no limits. It's pretty
Dude,
wild. Like we weren't
like
able to do this
data,
even, what'd you say?
data. Sorry, man. Like just the amount of data, I
Yeah.
can't even fathom where all of it goes.
I know, right? I know, it's crazy. And it's all stored forever too. For as long as the internet is around, your live streams are going to be around forever. It's like a legacy for you and the community too, because like I imagine the live chats are also there on the video forever. So it's pretty wild what the internet is, man. I see it as like an archive of humanity. Like we just use it now just for memes and to satisfy ourselves when we're bored, but it's really something greater. It's a way to connect to each other, but it's also a way to leave some kind of legacy for the future generations. It's pretty trippy.
It's amazing
Yeah.
you say that, man. Like I agree completely. And alongside the fact that we're leaving this legacy, I also think of it as like extremely valuable information when it comes to training things, where instead of showing up, right, like filming ourselves stomping on flowers. We're filming this and trying to share mindful conversations. And in doing so, the future AI systems that will be analyzing our entire internet will in turn be influenced by these
Mm,
conversations. I would like to go as far as to train my own AI systems on our streams, create a model, if you will, based on the things that we believe. And again, as you mentioned, because the internet stores these things, all of that information, all of the comments, all of the friends that were contributing to this space will be part of that system.
yeah. And this is just the beginning too. Like the next iteration of the internet and technology as a whole is going to morph from how we have it now. So I don't think we can even imagine where it's going to go and what our contribution to the internet per se is going to be. It's like, oh, I don't know, man. It's going to get trippy, especially when AR
Sing-
gets involved.
the singularity is coming, man.
Yeah.
And like I've been playing with this idea for a long time, and it's like basically information, as you mentioned, like the storing of information, the condensing of information, where all of human information has now been stored on technically, by extension, your cell phone. Like you have
Yeah.
access to it through your cell phone. And we're reaching a point where, like within a black hole, if there is a singularity, the only way for it to make sense of what's on the other side is a whole new expansive universe. And that's
Mm,
what I believe we're going towards with Web3 / the new internet. Is it's going to become a whole parallel world to ours that
yeah.
we can literally, go and live in or interface with.
God dang, I don't know if that's a good and a bad thing. Depends how you look at it. Depends how you're using it for, like we said before, man. Mm. It's just like information.
Getting lost.
Yeah, getting lost in endless information. We're already kind of there.
Mm.
There's endless information already, but like what's going to make the difference in the future is how quickly it's going to be able to reach us and
Mm.
how quickly it's going to reach our interface of our body. How intertwined we are with this technology because slowly and slowly I think web3 is also going to evolve to be more intertwined with like literally our being. It already is with the advent of the cell phone. Like we have it in our pockets at all times. Most people do at least. When it used to be 10, 15 years ago, you had a special dedicated location to use a computer. Most
Yeah,
people
the
didn't even
family
have
computer.
computers. But yeah, the family computer. Now it's like everybody has a computer. TVs are computers. Cars are computers. Everything is becoming a computer. And that includes us. We're
Yeah.
becoming the computer, man. I think that's where it's going to morph. Like Web3 is way more than we can ever imagine it to be right now. It's just becoming literally intertwined with our experience here. And like I said, that is a good thing in terms of, enlightening ourselves to our true essence, our true being. But then on the other side of the coin, you might have some dark forces that will allow you to get sucked into the matrix a little bit more. So it's just like as it is now. I think in the future it'll be ever more so important to use it effectively to grow, essentially, or to liberate yourself from being caught in this like weird matrix system that we seem to be going toward.
I'm happy you're using the words liberate yourself. Like you're a yoga practitioner as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel that's gonna be like one of the cures, man. Like if
Oh yeah.
people completely pour themselves into that world without at least like bringing a practice into their life like yoga in the real world, I
Yep.
feel like that is how you lose your mind,
Mm-hmm.
because like I think it's going to be like a balance, very much so. Like we've already, I mean, like what we're doing right now is interfacing with technology. It is all like I believe honestly we're already cyborgs. As you
Oh
mentioned,
yeah.
we have these devices on our bodies. we
Yeah.
we don't want to live without electricity anymore because of that as well. And then I want to ask you the question: what is your opinion on brain computer interfaces?
Well, it sounds scary, but I don't think there's any way around it at this point. And it's going to be, it depends, like, is it literally hooked up to our brain and controlling our brain, or are we still able to have some input? Because that's when it gets like a little, if this thing is like literally influencing our brain and switching up how we think, that's not good. I don't think that's not anything toward liberation. That's only going to control us even more, or at least the
Yeah,
potential is there for us to control. If it's just aiding us, like a cell phone does, just to an extent where it's like literally in our body, I don't think that's detrimental per se. I think it could be detrimental just as technology is nowadays. But as long as this thing isn't controlling us, this technology is not literally controlling how our brain fires off the neurons, then I think we're okay. But I think it already kind of is doing that just indirectly through the
yeah.
influences from the five senses. It is directing how our brain fires off stimuli. It's just going to get more intertwined when it's hooked up literally to our eyeball or literally inserted into our brain. So yeah, man, I think it's gonna happen. It's kind of like the cell phones. Like I said, man, it's if you don't have the it's going to be in the future. If you don't have the brain input, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Like if you don't
Advantage
have a cell phone
significant.
nowadays, you're at a
Yeah.
disadvantage. It'd be you're like you ever met a person without a cell phone? I haven't.
It's
So
the same. And like
so
you're exponentially more capable as a human being these days with a cell phone in your hand than
yeah.
without one. And
So
I
it
and I agree
probably
completely
yeah,
with your
it's going to be
narrative
that
of
times 5 with the brain input.
exactly. Like and you said it beautifully, man. Like on touching on both sides, I believe, and the way that I've been like trying to build a model in my own head for this is like with advertising. How
Yeah.
certain people are more susceptible to advertising than other people. I feel like our archetype sees advertising and it's almost like a sense of disdain sometimes. We're like, oh, don't you dare advertise to me. And like if there becomes this narrative, like imagine if you could, like, for instance, influence your neurochemicals, with these BCIs. So now not only do you see an advertisement, but you literally get an increased level of dopamine in your brain,
Yeah,
the
no,
sense
that's
to the sense to do something, seeing a product.
yeah.
And even though it could be seen as mind control, it will still be a choice. Like
Mm,
I feel like that choice never can be taken away from us, even though we might be manipulated more so than ever. And those that are unwilling to practice awareness, again, to unite with self, to like spend time without the device, just staring out into the world, breathing, and then going back into that world. I feel like meditation, mindfulness, and yoga are going to be an essential part to balancing the mind control, to say it in
yeah.
so many ways.
I agree, man. 100%. That's why it's so important to be able to do that, have that practice, start practicing now,
Yeah,
today. Do it now. If nobody does
it's a
it,
muscle.
yeah, you have to. Because if not, then you're just gonna get lost in the sauce. And yeah, the sauce is only getting thicker and thicker every day that goes by. So yeah, you have to do it. There's no other choice because I think ultimately going into the brain computer interface it's not going to make us happier. It's not going to
Mm,
make us suffer even less. It's going to make us suffer even more, probably. It's going to just show us that we need this and you need to be like this. Look at this. Look at this. Look over here. Don't you want to have this car or whatever? Just like you said, the advertisements are going to get even more intense. And it's just
yeah.
going to control our brain indirectly even more. So, yeah, we have to, man. There's no other choice. You have to go on the path. And I think that's what's happening now. Is like there's two poles of the mind kind of happening. It's like you can get sucked in, lost in the TikTok videos, lost in the noise of the internet, or you can find out yourself. And obviously, those are just two opposites, polar opposites. You got to find the balance between the two and find out where on the spectrum is most comfortable for you. And it depends on the day, it depends on the person, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Mm,
It's like two, almost like two groups of mind that are forming right now. It's like Babylon and Zion. It's
yeah.
liberation and getting sucked in. Yeah, but yoga, meditation is the way out, I believe.
Like, and it's again that dopamine feedback loop, right? Where it's so easy to just scroll,
Yep.
and then you get so stuck in that mindset where it's almost like nothing else exists outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it beautifully as well with the like there's two minds forming right now, where some people believe that this is just the way that it is, and they just kind of like pour themselves into it, and other people are willing to go and find for themselves. And I feel it's more difficult than ever to find the right information. As you mentioned, like the source is so thick, trying to pick out what is right and what is wrong within that
Yep.
infinity literally is so difficult. And then there's another thing that's coming up in my mind is with algorithms.
Yep.
How like the TikTok algorithm technically is the thing that keeps you scrolling,
Yeah.
where it keeps this perpetual loop of, oh, this is the stuff you like. Well, we'll keep showing you this stuff because
Mm-hmm.
this is what you like. So we'll keep showing you this stuff. No, 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 no. And
Yep.
then the counterbalance to that is people willing to see the algorithm and what the algorithm shows them as again a reflection of themselves. That what
Mm-hmm.
your algorithm shows you is surely it's trying to suck you in, trying to capture your attention, but at the same time, it's you.
Yeah.
Like the
Exactly.
reason it's showing you that stuff is because of what you like to see, of what your neurology and your neuro pathways basically get stimulated by, get fascinated by.
Yeah. That's when the game changed too, when they introduced the algorithm rather than a sequential timeline, I guess you could say, with social media. It's something that is curated for you and something that is never ending, essentially. So it's curated, never ending content for you. That's so, yeah, that's not good, man.
And
It's
what the
scary.
next step of that is, man? Like
What?
instead of it being content creator based, it's going to be directly AI based.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to be like an AI system that can create content directly. And if you have BCIs, it can literally base on your neural activity exactly what you want to see. And it could create a
Oh
loop
yeah.
so beautiful that you would convince yourself that there's nothing better to experience.
That's wild. Yeah. When they don't only have our cookies online, they don't only have our history, they got literally our bodily response to certain things.
Biofeedback.
Biofeedback. Yeah, that's when it's going to get really intrusive. Damn, man. Maybe I don't want the brain computer interface anymore.
It's a good question too. Like, and
Uh,
I'm still pro brain computer interface, and it's for the same reason that you mentioned. It's capacity slash capability that I'm fascinated by. Like for me, even though that might be the reality, right? And like I feel people will absolutely get lost in that loop of exactly like AI to person catered content. But I also feel there's going to be a great potential in person AI slash community content
yeah.
where you as a creator can work with your AI assistant to create something beautiful. Like, we have this ability to imagine beautiful scenic, works of art. And yet trying to translate that with our little meat sticks can be a little bit jarring sometimes. So
Hmm.
to me, I feel like that's the thing that fascinates me the most is just increasing my creative ability
Yeah.
is what I'm looking forward to the most.
Yep. I agree. Because ultimately, we have the choice. We have the will here.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever lose that. No matter how lost we may seem, how cyborg we may seem, we still have that creator aspect that's
Yeah.
within us, within our soul. And I don't think, yeah, that's something you don't lose. I think that's just being human to
Yeah.
be able to tap into that and use that. It's something special. So as long as you do the meditation, yoga, like we said, you'll be able to stay human, essentially. And yeah, man, what do you do? What's your practice like? Do you meditate? Do some yoga?
I
Psychedelics?
meditate. I do psychedelics as well. I'm a big fan of mushrooms personally. That's like
Mm-hmm.
my OG. Then LSD, then DMT. Like I had an experience the 22nd of September at 22 minutes past 10 this year of 2022. Like I went into it with this intention of hitting all twos at the same time.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I went into this experience, and the first thing that came to my mind was heal my brain, is
Hmm.
what I asked. And instead of kind of like getting sucked into the experience as you do, and in a way, like we can kind of like draw some parallels with the whole AI thing, where your brain is the AI, and then you input all of this information, and then it creates this whole experience in front of you. Instead of that experience being created, I instantly opened my eyes, and I was completely grounded in my body. Like it was almost like I refused to go there,
Hmm.
wherever there is. And it came to me as this genuine, resolute understanding that I'm supposed to be here, that these experiences exist. There's this means to escape, if you will, but I am supposed to be here. I'm here for a reason. Mushrooms, I feel, is like a teacher to me. Like it's very vocal. It's like a feminine voice that kind of
Yeah.
speaks to me. And
Mm-hmm.
then the LSD experience can be narrative, where I'm the one telling myself a story about it.
Mm.
My yoga practice is usually, just what I feel comfortable with. If I'm stiff in a certain way, if my wrist is hurting, I'll adjust for that. And then I have a hatha yoga practice that I give online as well every single day. That's like 15 minutes of like moon salutations, some wide-legged twists, forward folds, cat cows, and like leg raises, and like some bridges. And then meditation, of course, like for me, I'm a big Zazen practitioner, where I just sit down and with my eyes open, I just observe. I bring my attention back to my breath if I feel like I'm projecting too much. And then I just kind of like ebb and flow back and forth between those processes.
Mm.
How
That's
about
awesome.
yours?
It's a good mix. Pretty similar to yours, to be honest with you. Yeah, honestly, it's pretty similar. I don't think I need to go into it too much, but it's just a lot of yoga, pranayama meditation, and magic mushrooms as well. And I think that's just a good mix to be able to stay aligned, to stay on that wavelength of being human. And I like what you said, where your job is to be here, because I think that's the last message of psychedelics, man, that anyone could get. When you get the message, hang up the phone. It's that life is the trip. It
Yeah,
really is, man. I
that's
mean,
it.
you could go to far off other dimensions, or at least you think you do, and you always come back. You always come back to being human, and you realize how beautiful this human trip is. Even though there is a lot of darkness, there's a lot of suffering that we could witness here. Essentially, man, we're supposed to witness that. Like we're supposed to be here and create that better world. I think that's the ultimate message of psychedelics, in my view, in my experience, is that there is this otherworldly realm, another heavenly realm. It seems the uh, the other, this
Mm.
this there's this other dimension. Maybe one could say. I don't know, but
Another way of living.
yeah,
I've like,
yeah, that's what it is. It's like you bring that energy back into here, and you create that other way of living for yourself and essentially the entire world. I think that's what psychedelics show me, is that it's possible. We can all do this. We can all get on that wavelength. And it's really just a matter of vibration. It's a matter of how you want to orient yourself here and how you want to act here with other people and how you want to speak, how you want to eat, the media that you consume. It's the whole gamut. It's what you really take in and what you essentially after that what you put out. It's a reorientation of how we act and be as a human here, you know?
I think of it as fractal in nature, where every single thing you expose yourself to, as you mentioned, the food you eat, your practice, the people you expose yourself to, all
Hmm.
of these things are like little nodes on the fractal that becomes you and becomes your day-to-day experience. And we have the ability to influence that. And I feel as soon as you take some psychedelics, it almost shows you the
Yeah.
fractal instead of you just being in the fractal. It kind of like gives you that perspective of being like, look at this, these things that you do, these practices. Like for instance, I had a hard time dealing with depression during most of my teenage years. You know, as I said to you a little bit earlier, I grew up in a Christian household, a lot of guilt, a lot of separateness consciousness, a lot of feelings of I'm an evil entity. Like still sometimes to this day, like I'm evil somehow. And this genuine dread with existence. And then I had my first like 3 gram mushroom experience. And for the first time in my life, I had this overwhelming sense of I'm happy to be alive. And I've never felt that way up to that point.
Hmm.
And like I feel like ever since that day, I've been able to show up for other people in a way where I know that that's possible. That feeling is possible, and now I want to, right, without feeding people psychedelics, share that with them.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah, not I don't think everybody has to do psychedelics. It definitely would help if it's calling for, the person, but I think forcing it isn't the way to go because it's just a matter of energy. It's a matter of vibration. When mushrooms allow you to tap into that vibration, but yeah, you can do that on the reg. You can do that sober, man. You can tap into the and it's just the vibration of love. If you know how to
Yeah,
tap into love, which is always here, it always has been, and always will be, then you're tapping into the vibration of truth, and you're tapping into the vibration essentially of healing and placement, being here, and having a reason to be alive. Yeah, it's the whole gamut of psychedelics. It's just like it shows you a purpose for being here, but essentially, it just comes down to love, man.
yeah. You
That's
said
the.
it beautifully, man. Like my statement to the world that I make over and over again is 3 words: love is true.
Mm-hmm.
Because every single time I have these psychedelic trips, I like there's a bunch of noise, there's a bunch of wow, this is a lot. And then if you just take a step back, as you mentioned, if you tune into that frequency of stillness, from that arises this truth of love. That
Yeah,
you feel this deep sense of connectedness and oneness with all everything.
it's beautiful, man, ain't it? It's so easy to lose track of that, but it's also so easy to gain. It's hidden
Yeah.
in plain sight at all times. But it's the ultimate truth that I think it sounds a little far fetched, but I think we're all going to be on that wavelength someday. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I
My
think
prediction is 2044.
2044. Okay, that's good. 22 years.
Yeah, it's
I
not
can
too
see
long
that.
anymore.
I mean, it sounds far fetched, but I think it's going to happen, man. And a world all on that wavelength, people would scoff at that idea. They're like, what? It doesn't even make any sense, man. You watch the news? Does it look like love? But it's the truth. And once you
Yeah,
know the truth, it's like there's no other way to live.
exactly.
So I think eventually the truth it's coming in. And I think that's what's happening right now is through our turmoil, through all the shit that's happening in the world, through the inertia, slowly and slowly, all these little nodes of consciousness are waking up to the how we haven't been aligned with, some may say God, some may say love, the truth, whatever you want to call it, and we're all slowly waking up to that, and thus that's creating a whole different world aligned with how we're actually supposed to be here, because there actually is a way that we're supposed to be here. There's a way that we're supposed to all live, and that's all in love. And can you imagine that, like a world that is actually on that wavelength, man? It's so unfamiliar. I don't even think that we could come up with how that looks, to be honest with you. The world might even destroy itself before then. It might even, I don't know, man. What do you think it's like? Like, so why 2044? Like, why 22 years?
Like that's I guess just one of those nice numbers in my mind. Like the 44 number has been very significant in my life as well.
Mm,
And I feel like especially looking at the year 2022, you know? Like I feel like it's like a breaking point, and we're gonna spend 22 more years almost like getting past these things that we're going through right now, where like this war in Ukraine, what's happening in Iran right now, what's happening in, yes, like just all over the world. It's almost like the last parts of separate consciousness is like desperately clinging
Yeah,
to the old
exactly.
way of being.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exhausting our souls, you know, like to see it, to feel it, to see the amount of angst in humanity. It's making us so tired that the truth isn't going to be something forced upon each other. It's just going to be something that's accepted, you know, like it's going to be like a cosmic orgasm is the way that I like to phrase it.
Yeah. So how did you get on this wavelength? Was it through a psychedelic experience? Was there just one moment where it just hit you and you said, "Oh shit, love is the truth"?
Man, that's a big question. It it went through waves. You know, I had a few suicide attempts with pills when I was in my teenage years, and the last one, you know, like I tried to educate myself, so I went and did the research. You know, I weighed myself, and then I calculated exactly how much I would need to off myself,
Damn.
plus alcohol, and then extra. You know, and I went through with it. And as I was feeling myself disintegrating, I was faced with this choice, you know, like, yeah, you have the infinite possibility of dying right now, or you have the infinite possibility of continuing and living. And no matter what you choose, eventually, you know, within the infinite multiverses, you're going to be right here, right now, making this exact same choice.
Hmm.
And I was like, dude, do I want to spend a trillion years coming back to this moment, or do I want to continue on from this moment? And I completely turned around. You know, I purged what was in my system, and it was this genuine realization that there is no failing. You know, even if I succeeded in dying at that point, it wouldn't be a failure. I would just live a different life. I would experience something differently. And when I really came to that realization, it kind of like pushed me to ask more questions as well. It pushed me to start exploring more, you know, what it is I'm supposed to be doing. If sorry, Mama. You know, my mom is trying to feed me something.
You can eat. That's fine.
I appreciate it. Like
That's fine.
I had this genuine feeling and realization that I was supposed to be doing something, right? That within this infinite possibility, that if dying wasn't what I wanted to do, what am I trying to live for? And that kind of like put me on this journey of exploration, conversations with friends, and I started kind of like exploring fitness, you know, and I got into fitness. I was extremely overweight, maybe between like 50, maybe 60 pounds overweight. And I started exercising, lost the weight, started feeling better for that. Also smoked marijuana during that time of my life. And it started like coming to me that I have the ability to influence the way I feel, and making choices kind of like influences my neural chemicals, my literally the fractal, as you mentioned, right? Like these things that we do, foods we eat, people we talk to, things we expose ourselves to, more and more of that started contributing to the sense of oneness, the sense of understanding within me. And then, you know, this truth of love kind of arose within me, exploring all of these bits of information, like seeing the food we eat, exercise, the conversations we have day to day to day. What is the truth arising from all of those things? And I was like, oh, I'm exercising because I love myself. I'm talking to people because I love them. I'm eating good food because I love my body and I'm trying to treat it well. And it just came, it's like a bubble, or you know, the center point with which everything else stems off of.
Wow. It's pretty powerful, man. Pretty much got to the end. You got the wit's end to
Yeah.
enable you to make that change. Wow. I think that's what happens for a lot of people to be able to get on that wavelength. It's just like you reach a point where it's like I can't go along with the narrative anymore. I can't be on this hamster wheel anymore. And I got to change up. Something has to change. And I think that's what's happening right now collectively. The whole world
Yeah.
is going through this giant metamorphosis, a giant changing process, and it's through conflict. We find harmony through conflict. So there's a lot of conflict in people's lives. It's going to reach a breaking point in people's lives, all individually. And I think it's going to get people on this wavelength of yoga and spirituality. And if not,
Yeah,
you're just going to keep suffering. You know,
exactly.
suffering for us is actually, it's for us. You know, suffering is like a message
It's a
for us to
symptom.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we think it's happening to us, like, oh no, woe is me, which I can see that, obviously. But with the right perspective, you'll see that your suffering is actually for all of us to be able to align ourselves with the greater good of God
mm,
or love, or whatever you want to call it, the greater good in your own life, creating a better life. And yeah, and with that perspective, you can see any future suffering in that way as well. You can see that everything that happens or will happen to you is actually for you. And then from there, you're happier, man. Isn't that what we all want? You suffer less, you know, with the
yeah.
right. I think, I don't like to speak on enlightenment too much, but I think enlightenment and awakening is really just a perspective change in oneself. And it's to be able to see our entire life as sacred, no matter what happens, even the really shitty, dark parts of our life. It's all sacred for us to be able to wake up to the reality of God that's within all of our lives at all times. And until we get the message, it's gonna keep happening. There's always going to be something that's gonna try to put us back on the straight and narrow of love. But we gotta keep doing our thing, or else we will fall off, and we're gonna keep getting the message. We're gonna keep suffering. It's just like I said before, man. It's a reorientation of how we see ourselves, how we see the world, and then how we act in the world. And that's the path.
It's beautifully said, man. And like
Yeah.
you resonated with me as well. Like it brought up this fractal of the festivals that I've
Mm.
gone through, where people like us tend to go to these psychedelic psytrance festivals, and like almost I would say 99% of these individuals that you feel this sense of connectedness, the sense of oneness, you see that within them. All of them has the story of suffering,
Yeah.
having had gone through a loss, having had gone through, extreme turmoil, extreme pain, to the point of almost completely melting away and realizing there is still something, that as you mentioned, that God, that love, that truth at the
Hmm.
core of all of us. And it's kind of like it's a paradox almost, that we have to get to a point of extreme pain so that we can stop being in that pain. And that's where the MeltMore name comes from for me, right? Like you have to allow yourself to melt, and you can melt even more. And even if you melt to the point of complete desolation, you'll still be there. You'll
Hmm.
still be there on the other side.
So you're melting into your experience.
Melting into your experience, and also like the experience you think is your experience could be melting away, right?
Uh huh.
Like the experience of Gary, right? Like when the experience of your job, your environment, your family, your planet, your galaxy, all of these things completely melt away, and you're just overwhelmed with information, and you're trying to stay attached, right? You're trying to gather these bits of yourself, because, oh no, if I lose these bits, who am I?
I see. Mm-hmm.
You are.
Mm-hmm.
You are, without all of these things that you have almost like convinced yourself that you are attached to.
I like that. Hmm. And that's what causes us suffering. Trying to cling on to ideas of what we think we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And that's how we got in this mess, this whole world. It's an identity crisis. It's a giant identity crisis.
Yeah, identity crisis on top of a meaning crisis, like,
Mm.
who am I and what do I mean?
Right? And that's how we got here. Wow, that's so crazy. Yeah, man. It's how we look at the world. I mean, it is suffering. There is suffering here. There is going to be sickness, death, injury, but it's how we look at it. We don't go into it like, oh, no, this sucks, become depressed. It's like you go into the storm. You know, you fly right into the storm. You get on your horse and just gallop right in, man. You know, you fly into the eye. That's what it's all about. It's not that the suffering ends per se. It's just that the way that you look at it is a little bit differently. And from there, your life changes. It's like it's the pain is still going to be there, but it's how we respond to the pain.
Your
You know, we
relationship
don't
to it.
yeah, we don't become a servant to the pain. The pain serves us, whatever us is. You know, our actions here. The pain is how we. It's like it's an energy transmutation. It's like because the pain is energy, the suffering is energy. So you're gonna let it keep you stagnant, keep you depressed, or you're gonna transmutate that energy into a sense of creation and create a better world from that. It's pretty simple, man. That's what's happening with yoga. You know,
Hmm.
we become fused. We form a union with that pain, and it's like we don't resist that. It is a part of us, and we
Ease
use
into
that
it.
energy. Yeah, you melt into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
like, and it's such a beautiful thing to me as well. Like, I've only been practicing yoga now for less than a year, technically. Like, a friend introduced me to yoga. Like, he's like, I love him to death. He's like one of my favorite people in the world, and he's like one of those little bit more pessimistic individuals, and I'm obviously an extremely optimistic individual. So we fit like, peanut butter and jelly with one another. And he's an extreme motivator for me, and I tried to motivate him as well. And he introduced me to this brutal, I don't know if you know Dylan Werner. Dylan
Devin
Werner,
Burn? No.
he's like this, he does these crazy, like from the hands, legs up into the sky yoga poses and stuff like that. It's just like absolute insanity. I'm not there yet. I want to get there eventually, but like extremely difficult yoga. And I've been exercising for a long time up until that point, but I never actually felt like I was doing anything useful or functional. And then, kind of like introducing this yoga practice into my life, for the first time, I felt like a genuine sense of, as you mentioned, like a connectedness. Like, yoga means to unite with yourself, right? And like this breath and paying attention to how it is you're holding your body, how it is you're trying to almost like transcend the pain, go
Yeah,
past what you think you're capable of and still find yourself on the other side of it.
exactly, man. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing because yoga is very painful. You know, it doesn't necessarily feel good, but that's what we use it for. It's like a giant lesson. Every time we do yoga, we realize that we're self-inducing this pain, and it makes the pain, I guess you could say, that is not self-induced a little easier to bear. You know,
Mm.
it's a giant. It also makes us in shape, and it makes us actually feel physiologically good. But it's also a mental lesson to show that you can go through pain. It's okay. Like pain is okay. Um, yeah, and then from there you make your whole life a yoga. That's essentially the goal.
Yep.
You make your whole life a giant meditation, and the whole world is an ashram. That's essentially the
Hmm.
goal of all of this, and I think we're gonna get there, man. I think the whole world is gonna be at that because, like I said, there's no other way. There's
Mm.
no other way. Eventually, we're gonna get to a point where it's just gonna be so much where people are gonna have to enact these things in their life, like yoga and meditation, and see the world for what it is, which is just a giant temple. Earth is just a giant temple for us to be here and to spiritually evolve and learn. And yeah, I don't know, do whatever we got to do here. I mean, do you think that there is a I mean, this is a cliche question. Do you think there is a continuation, like reincarnation, after this earthly
Ooh,
incarnation?
that's a great question, and I've been thinking about that in the context of like linearity as well, right? Like,
Mm.
if reincarnation is a thing, am I reincarnating into the future? Could I reincarnate into the past? If I reincarnate into a past version of myself, does that make me more or less enlightened, right?
Mm.
If another person next to me makes me feel like he was myself before I died, or like that was the previous version of myself. The
Yeah.
way that I have almost like balanced that whole thing in my mind is that we are all one, right? Like, we are consciousness, like we are unity become multiplicity. And that multiplicity is technically united within the infinity as well. So we're all the same thing, experiencing different versions of self at the same time, where time is also an illusion in that, where if you look at it from a fifth dimensional perspective, encapsulating the fourth dimension of time and then all three dimensions down, technically all of time exists in a moment right in front of you.
Mm,
So all of existence, all of the lives we've lived, all of the experiences we'll have as the fifth dimensional unity consciousness watching it, almost like having that experience right now.
yeah, I understand. But it's like, you can say that, and I get that. And especially in moments, I get direct experiences of that. But there's still this seeming, there's oneness, but there's still this seeming separateness. That's me, you, the listener. We feel like we're separate. And does that energy of experience reincarnate? Because if reincarnation is a thing, which Buddhism and Hinduism say is, then what reincarnates? How can everything be one, but yet there is something that reincarnates? Is it just like a form of cause and effect that reincarnates? Like it's just my energy? It's not my identity of Gary. Is it like an energy form that I take on here and then thus transfers into the future or the past? You know, I mean, I don't think anybody has the answer. I'm just kind of
It's a trip,
free
man.
balling.
It's such a trip, dude. And I
Yeah.
love having conversations like this because it makes my mind try to find answers and it feels more expansive.
Yeah.
I've like the closest I've gotten to it as well is, the Kabbalion kind of talks about the all as mental, right? And then it kind of like goes into all of these dualities, like that everything is a duality, that there is paradox within this reality, and without paradox in this reality isn't in the way that it is, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
this is also like reincarnation in and of itself is in a way a paradox that we have a hard time reconciling as logical human beings. For me, I think of it from this experience, like having had DMT experiences, as that other is like the spiritual realm, where you don't have to be embodied to be an experiencer. And
Mm.
then when you die, when this body perishes, that experiencer continues to that realm of spirit and then gets to have that experience as spirit until it decides it wants to have again the experience of physicality. And it's just like an infinity loop goes back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's trippy. Damn. Yeah, that's a cycle,
And
man.
the beautiful thing is that we can't know. Like the only way for us to know is to eventually die, and that's why I'm not
Mm.
scared of death either.
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost like it's gonna be the final trip that we get to have in this experience.
Yeah, man. That's the big one that this whole path outlines for us is kind of looking at our death a little bit differently because, we all kind of are a little bit hesitant of our demise. Somewhere it's just deep seated in our DNA, right? None of us want to perish. But it's a difference between not wanting to die and then not being scared to die. And I think that is what the path shows us. It's like, I don't feel scared either. I mean, I wouldn't want to if there was a 18 wheeler coming at me right now. I would obviously get out of the way. But the unknown sense of death is not scary to me anymore. That sense of ultimate change, of losing it all, it's not as scary. I'm not going to say I'm not completely scared. I mean, I'm not completely free of the fear. I don't think that is even possible. I'm definitely far better off than I was years ago, but it's like, I don't know, it's just, yeah, just becoming more comfortable with it because it's inevitable for all of us.
Yeah,
All of us, we're all going to die. So it's like a huge part of the path is becoming comfortable with our ultimate destination. And I don't think it's to be feared. I think it is safe, man. I think what this whole path shows us is that it is just part of the movie. It's the great
yeah,
conclusion of to whatever is going to happen after. Who knows? And I also, maybe it's just the beginning. We think of it as the ultimate end. Well, what if it's actually just the beginning? This is just the prelude. Whatever's going on right now, especially if you wake up, quote unquote, that's just the beginning, man. This is just when the party gets started, and then after we die, who knows? I think it's truly unfathomable. I don't think there's anything that we can rationally say that describes what the death experience is like, but I don't think it's to be feared, for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely not to be feared.
Something I like to tell my viewers is death is not dangerous.
Mm,
You know, like, and I've been sharing this sentiment as well with friends, that I would rather be optimistically wrong about everything
yeah, yeah,
than fearfully right
yeah,
about everything. And as you mentioned, from this DNA perspective, being optimistically wrong about things from a survival standpoint might not be great. If there's a lion in the bush rustling, and I'm like optimistically being like, yeah, there's probably just nothing, and then I get eaten by a lion, it's not
yeah.
exactly great.
Are there
But I'd
lions in
rather,
South Africa?
yeah, there are not
Okay.
like around, fortunately, but there are lions in South Africa.
What were you saying? Sorry.
No, no, no. Just like that's it. Basically, the gist of it. It's just I can't justify living in a state of fear anymore. As you mentioned, like the state of fear of death, state of fear about what the future is going to hold for us,
Yeah,
what our lives are going to be like. It's not serving us to live in that state anymore.
yeah. Because think about it. What do we fear? We fear losing what we have, what we think we are, the unknown. Like I said, we fear change. Human beings, I think, like a sense, even if it's an illusion, we like the sense of stability, to have some kind of structure to our lives. But ultimately, that's an illusion. When you go on the path and you get into spirituality, you break down the illusion, all the illusions within ourselves, and you see that it's all just a folly that we build up over the
The cosmic
years.
giggle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have points where you just laugh. You're like, oh my God, this is who I thought I was, or I thought the world was. Yeah, so we fear losing that. And it's through our conditionings, it could be from past lifetimes, some say, it could be from our childhood, our environment that we grew up in, but we just fear these narratives that were built up for us. We fear losing them.
And we can
Yeah,
even go into like DNA information,
yeah,
that we know, for example, that if you expose, a caterpillar to a certain scent and then you shock it, even after dissolving itself and turning into a butterfly, being exposed to that scent again instantly creates a stress response within the butterfly. It's completely a different entity. And
yeah,
yet its DNA remembers there's something to be feared with that scent. And then to extrapolate that to our entire humanity's history, the
yeah,
amount of fear we've been through, the amount of prosecution we face, the amount of hurt, the amount of attack, and almost like being in a state of reality, like we were preparing for the longest time for a world that no longer exists.
oh
And
yeah.
to be present in this moment for the world that actually is.
Hmm. Yeah, man. You know what one of the biggest fears of human beings is? Other human beings.
Yeah.
It's ironic
It is. It is.
because we're just beings of love deep down. Yeah, we have this shield up. And it's probably in our DNA, like you said, because who have been the biggest killers of other humans? It's been other humans, not
Yeah.
lions, snakes, or spiders. Though we definitely have those fears in our DNA. But the biggest killer of human beings has been other human beings. Oh my God.
The biggest causes of suffering as well, and
Yeah.
even like to the point of just like words, how we can devastate one another with sounds that we make. That's a whole trip in itself.
Right? Yeah. Jeez, man. How do we
Can
get
I just
here?
tell you something?
Go ahead.
You inspire me, dude. Like knowing that people like you exist, it gives me so much hope, man. Like I know we're gonna be so fine because
Yeah.
we're here.
Same, man. Yeah, that's why I do this thing, to connect with other like-minded people, to know that I'm not crazy, and to let others
Yeah.
know that they're not crazy. Yeah, there's light, man. There's light here. That's what's happening. We're literally letting light in through our beings. We're letting this light in. It's like a download from, I don't know, who knows where, some other dimension. And we become light, and we shine it on to others. And I can feel yours, you can feel mine, and it's through space and time. This light, it's the light of love, man, and it's happening right now. There's a lot of darkness, but all you need in the darkness is just this little glimmer of light, and it
Little point.
slowly gets bigger and bigger, slowly gets bigger and bigger, and that's the light of love. It's It's the eternal light of love. It's happening, man. It's happening right
Darkness
now.
is only there as an obstacle for light to overcome.
Amen. That's what's happening, man.
What brought you onto this journey, man?
Hmm. I mean, I was also in a similar state, not being happy with my life, just kind of also having some suicidal ideations. I never attempted it, thankfully, but I had the thought of it. Now I would never even think to do it. There's no way in
I'm
hell that
also
I would.
like looking back at that version of myself. It's trippy almost.
Yeah, I was in a dark place. I just resented myself, resented the world, resented my loved ones for some reason, just in this weird configuration of the mind. And something in me just said, I gotta change. And I also started smoking weed, and that enabled me to get on a wavelength of seeing things a little bit differently, like waking me up out of the programming a little slightly. It wasn't all of it, but it was the catalyst, I think. And then from there, just kind of kept diving into it from there. I don't know. I had some experiences off cannabis, which I think is very powerful. A lot of people don't think cannabis is powerful, but I think if you use it in the right way, in the right circumstances, cannabis can be a very powerful psychedelic, and I did use it in the right way.
Can
So
I
yeah.
share an experience? After you finish, I want to share a trip that I had with cannabis in that way. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
feel, please continue.
I mean, yeah, just cannabis allowed me to catalyze myself onto a spiritual sense of my being, or at least a sense of curiosity. And then from there, I got into meditation, got into yoga, then I got into mushrooms. And that's when the mushrooms showed me, like, okay, this is, I don't know what they showed me love, essentially. And from there, they're all play into each other. Like the mushrooms, the meditation, the weed, reading, the reading of scriptures, it all plays into the same wavelength, and they all correlated all somehow at the same time for me. And it was just comes down to curiosity, man. I just tried to figure out a way to live that wasn't so bleak, or didn't seem so bleak. At least there was just something that there was the part of me that was dark, and I felt like there was no hope in the world, but then there was also that little spark in me, that little spark of light that somehow enabled me to keep going and stay on that curious path, and luckily not have me attempt any kind of dumb self-harm. And I just somehow got on and found that light, that little spark, and I think it was through cannabis. I think it was. And then through meditation, kept tapping into it, and through affirmations of reading that other people have done it, and podcasts and other things online, I'm like, oh, this is real. This is actually not just me going crazy right now. And from there, just haven't looked back, and I'm still on that path, still on that wavelength. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So what's your experience with weed?
No, no, like thank you for sharing that, man. I can like something that's coming to me as well. Like I also had this experience with cannabis, almost like softening things for me.
Mm,
Where like our minds can be so sharp and so like critical of things,
yeah.
of our family, as you mentioned, of ourselves. And cannabis kind of allowed me a sense of softness, so that I can just take a step back and actually love myself.
Yeah.
That was the big thing for me. And the experience that I wanted to share, as you were talking about how powerful of a psychedelic we can actually be, and Terence McKenna gives, in quotation marks, good advice of how to do that, where you smoke as much as you can, like once a week.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like followed this advice on that,
Same.
smoked as much as I could,
Yeah.
sat down, started like a breathwork exercise where I would breathe in, hold at the
Mm,
top until I felt, okay, I want to exhale. And then I choose to exhale, hold at the bottom until I
mm,
felt, okay, I want to inhale, and then choose to inhale. And I went through these patterns, a few times, and it opened up to me this psychedelic experience where I saw Jesus
wow.
smoking a joint, and he was smoking this joint and he was passing me the joint. And as soon as
I
I,
want to
and
smoke
as
with
soon as
Jesus.
I, yeah, exactly, dude. And it was like he was smoking a joint, but I felt like he was smoking a joint so that, or at least in my mind, so that it could be understandable. But the joint was supposed to represent a torch, like passing a torch,
Ooh,
if
I
you
like
will.
that.
And as he passes me this torch in the form of a joint, and I reach out to take it from him, it's not my hand reaching out, taking the joint from him, but this alien, like greenish, purple spotted, smooth skinned alien arm
Oh,
taking this joint from him. and then it like does this almost like multiverse slices thing where there's like arms on arms on arms on arms passing these joints to one another, and
Damn.
eventually, like after millions of these different alien arms, it reaches me, and I open my eyes and I'm like, whoa, what the hell was that? And it was a psychedelic experience, unlike mushrooms or unlike, DMT or LSD, where it felt real, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. And this was through also meditating, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
meditating, breath work, and then a lot of weed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think cannabis can take meditation to the next level. If you use
Absolutely.
both, I think they're like peanut butter and jelly. They're
I
like
mean,
they
like
go
for,
hand
for
in hand.
yoga as well.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
cannabis
Yeah.
and yoga also go well.
Mm-hmm. It just allows us to tap into our body a little bit more, like the field of our body, the energies of our body, and I guess manipulate it a little bit more. I don't know, become aware of it, and then be able to like actually take a hold of that. Yeah, for sure, man. That's what happened is I was smoking weed and then I started to meditate, and that's when it got very trippy and very, very powerful. I think we have very similar journeys, to be honest with you. And
Different
yeah,
different fractals, different families, different upbringings, and yet similarities, man.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty cool.
Oneness.
Oneness. That's what it's all about. Yeah, man. Wow. Yeah. There's also power in being sober as well. I think we mentioned that before. There's
Yeah,
power in
I'm
doing
I'm
these
on that
things.
journey right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm on day 8 of taking a little bit of a sobriety break, and I feel clear. Like one of the things I notice is my ability to type. Like I feel like now
Mm.
my typing speed is 2x.
That's
and
interesting.
I, and I'm just feeling, like for some reason when I get sober, I get more goofy. Like the weed kind of grounds me and makes me feel more human sometimes. And going without it kind of like creates this experience of almost like manic energy, and like kind of like giving yourself the opportunity to see the other side of it is what in turn informs when you do have it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just perpetually stay in the same loop, again, almost like coming back to the whole AI and brain computer interfaces loop. If you're just interfacing with the same loop over and over and over again, and you don't expose yourself to anything else, then it becomes stale.
Yeah.
You lose the magic.
Exactly, man. It's how we use these things. Ultimately, we use them to better ourselves here, and better act as a human being. Yeah, man. Just don't let it use us. I mean, contrary to popular belief, people say weed isn't addictive, but it kind of is, man. It's not physically addictive, but it's definitely habit forming for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, just don't get sucked into it, man. But it's all how we use it. Anything can be abused. Water can be abused. Food can be abused. It's all how we use these things, how we approach these things. All these tools, I guess you could say, for our being to better ourselves here and to be happy. 'Cause that's what it's all about.
We
Yeah, man.
encourage you, dear friend, be happy. Like you deserve that at least.
Yeah.
Like it's hard these days, man. I had this beautiful moment with my sister on the 4th of September. I took 7 days of fasting and broke my 7 days of fasting by dropping 2 drops of acid.
Oh.
And this experience opens up to me, and I watched this movie called Back at the Outback, and it's this animated kids movie about these dangerous animals trying to escape a zoo and get back to their home, and the adventure that kind of transpires. And there's a scene where this little girl kind of like saves these animals from the people like looking for them, and then frees them at the back of the I'm getting emotional just thinking about it again. Frees them at the back of the bus. And that moment, being in that psychedelic state of mind just opened my heart to the point of like tears, of just like emotionally sobbing, seeing that we as human beings are capable of sharing that love. Afterwards, I pause, I walk into the kitchen, I see my sister doing homework, and I tell her about this experience I had watching this movie and crying, and she starts laughing. She's like, I'm not laughing at you because you were crying. I'm just laughing at the imagery of a grown man tripping acid, watching a kids movie crying about a fictional character freeing other fictional characters. And I give my sister a hug, and I had this deep sense of realization again that all we're trying to do is make each other happy, and we get so caught up with these stories we tell ourselves about why we're separate, why this person wronged us, why we're feeling one way or another, that we rob ourselves of the happiness that we're all deserving of.
Mm. Amen, man. We rob ourselves. We really do. We do it to ourselves. But we can also do it to ourselves to become happy. There's no other
Yeah.
way. Wow.
Nowhere else to be found other than in you.
Yeah, man. Peace is within. Kingdom of heaven is within. It truly is, man. Yeah.
I'm
Wow.
extremely time dilated right now, man. This could have been 10 hours, it could have been 10 minutes.
That's the power of these conversations, man. They're like a wormhole. Yeah. But I think we can probably wrap it up at that point. You have any last words?
Love is true, dear friend. Show
Hmm.
up for love, show up for what you love, right? A minute, 10 minutes a day, art, singing, talking to the person you love the most in the world. And if we all can just show up for what we love, before we know it, the world's going to be a better place. This
True
is what I
that.
believe.
It's simple. It's simple.
It's that simple. Yeah. Thank
Love is the
you,
way.
Gary.
Thank
I
you.
honor you, Brother Bear. This conversation was amazing, man. I
Yeah.
feel hopeful.
Me too,
And
man.
that's a very, very valuable thing to be able to give someone else, man.
Seriously, we all need a little hope right now. There's always hope.
It's always hope. We just have to go and find it. Thank you for
Exactly, man.
finding me, man.
Of course.
I don't think this is the last time we'll have a conversation, Brother Bear.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Um,
We should definitely tap in again, for sure.
I plan on coming to the States at some point. If I'm in the neighborhood, I'll hit you up, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. That'd be good. Yeah, like an in person podcasts are a lot different. But it's so
No, yeah,
strange, isn't it? Like how we can connect through time and space. Like I'm not actually in the same room as you. I don't
yeah.
even know if you exist, to be honest with you. You're just an image on a screen and
I
some
could be an
audio.
illusion.
Yeah, you could be some kind of illusion right now. But there's something in me that says like, no, this guy, this is a real person. This is a real being, a real soul that I'm connecting to through this technology. And being able to do this is revolutionary. It's a beautiful thing that we can connect with each other and connect with the world through this technology, and not have locality be a limit to us anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's beautiful, man. Wonderful time to be
Time and
alive.
space is no longer a limitation, man. We would have traveled thousands of miles, spent multiple hours to be able to have a conversation like this, and in an instant, we're
Yeah,
doing it from thousands of miles away.
it's trippy. We're in
It's a
the future.
blessing.
It
We're
really
in
is.
the future. We're literally in the future. And on that note, just to like give you something to think about as well, the
Mm,
fireside stories of the past is our present.
damn,
Here we are. See yourself.
that's wild. Yeah. Well, with that, I thank you,
Thank you.
and yeah, I
Thank
thank
you so
anybody that
much.
listened this long. Namaste.
Namaste. Have an
Peace out.
amazing day.
You as
I'll
well,
see you
brother.
friends again soon.
Peace.
Cheers, cheers.